Good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, welcome. I'm happy to have you all here today to listen to this joint webinar between Healthy Performance and Prosure360 to discuss why not caring about the well-being of our workforce can impact on your bottom line. Just start off with a little bit of housekeeping. So you should all see the chat section on the webinar panel on your screen. If you could use that to fire any questions that you have throughout the webinar, we will endeavour to answer as many of those as possible, either at the end in a Q&A or as we go along if we see it's relevant to a part that we're talking about within the presentation. And we also have a handful of PDF downloads available for you in the same panel, all surrounding our topic here today. And throughout as well, we'll have a couple of quick fire poll questions, and your engagement with those will help us gather some really useful insights. So before we start, just a couple of introductions. Firstly, I am Scott Anderson. I'm the Operations Director at Prosure360. And for those of you that don't know who Prosure360 are, we're a cloud-based supply chain management platform that's used by buying organizations to gather insights on their supplier businesses. And the insights we offer range from financial health and safety aspects, as well as wider business continuity factors such as well-being. So I'm going to pass over now to Stuart Chambers, who's going to be our lead speaker today. So Stuart, over to you.
Thank you very much, Scott. It's a real pleasure to be with you all today. So my name is Stuart Chambers from Healthy Performance. I've been in the field of corporate wellbeing now for over 15 years, from a number of perspectives, from the front end of delivering and leading on wellbeing activities in organizations, through to helping leaders and managers create the plans, the strategic element for their wellbeing operations. So I've got a breadth of experience with different levels of well-being in organizations, and hoping to get some of that across to you in the session today. So I've got a very wide background of experiences within both the public sector and the private sector, from small companies all the way through to international companies. And maybe that's relevant for some of you today. So if you've got questions relating to the kind of scope and scale of your wellbeing operation or program, please, pop your comments and questions in the chat, as Scott mentioned, and we will have some time at the end of the session to come back to those questions and hopefully give you some more specific guidance in relation to your current situation. So let me go through the agenda for the session now. So we're going to go through a number of little themes for the session. If it will play, just bear with me. There we go. So here it is. So we're going to look at the business case for employee well-being. That's a prime driver for, of course, the name itself of the session itself. They're looking at the business case for it. So I'm going to highlight some really interesting statistics and facts come out from very recent research into, how do well-being programs actually help the business. We kind of well know now that well-being obviously helps people, but what's the payback? What's the return on that investment? Why is it a good thing for businesses to be engaging with? We'll also look in that, though, and we'll move on to in terms of the components of well-being. What does it entail to get those business benefits, to get the amount of return that you would like to get from that? What do you have to do? What's it involve? So we will look at the components and of a wellbeing program, and we'll look at the importance of taking a strategic approach to it. And this is a mistake that a lot of organizations do, is they don't have a strategic plan for their wellbeing programs. And it then tends not to lead to the kind of outcomes they're hoping for. So we'll touch on that today to look at what does a strategic plan look like when it comes to well-being. So we will be leaning in there to organizational kind of strategic planning and borrowing, if you like, some proven techniques from that field and applying it to well-being. So hopefully that will give you the kind of scope and scale of what what makes a wellbeing program effective to lead to those business benefits. We'll touch on the additional resources as well. Some of the PDFs, we'll highlight those at the end. And then, yeah, if whatever time is left available at the end, we'll answer any questions that come along. So let's then look now at the business case for wellbeing. So let's start with some of the usual suspects, first of all. So we've got here the happiness point of view. So happier employees. So what's the stat there? So University of Warwick did some really interesting research where they looked at, what is the effect of happiness on productivity, and they found very nicely that there's a 12% improvement in productivity from happy employees. So they've done some really good number crunching on this and looked at the impact of that. So they set up some experiments and some studies where they improved the happiness of people and then got them to do tasks. And they found that when people were happier, they were much more productive, and that was consistent in their research to the point where they can actually put a reliable number of 12% on that. So there's an interesting impact of one element of human emotions, happiness. But how's that linked to well-being? Well, one of the outcomes that we look for in well-being programs is happier people, because we know that it links to productivity. So that's one statistic. Let's look at some more. Motivation, another human factor that again is well documented to be a benefit of people that are in a greater state of well-being. Greater well-being tends to lead to greater motivation. This research comes from Mind, the mental health charity, and they found that 60% of employees say they feel more motivated when they are supported by some sort of mental well-being program. So that suggests that, from a motivation point of view, people are more motivated, they're more lean into their work if there's a kind of an effective support network around them. And that helps them obviously to be more committed and engaged with the work. So we can see that wellbeing programs can have a ripple effect, not above and beyond the normal kind of measurements, if you like, in terms of physical well-being, physical health rather, and mental health. And we can start to lead to those core drivers of emotion. And we can now put some statistics on that in terms of the actual impact on the business. Next one is another human emotion, which is being more active. And we can see this is from the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, NICE, that 30% improvement on physical activity levels when people had health promotions in the workplace. And this is a significant thing, in the workplace. So these are programs in the workplace promoting physical activity. And what it's led to is a 30% increase in people being physically active. And again, another great thing, because we know that physical activity is a great pillar, not just for health, but also for well-being, mental well-being. Let's look at some more stats. So reduced absenteeism. So this comes from Deloitte. They found that when they looked at the link between well-being and absenteeism, they found that rates of absenteeism dropped by 30%. And that is a significant saving for organizations because, of course, absenteeism does cause there's a big cost to the business, it's disruptive. And if we can reduce that, then there's obviously going to be a return there. So we're going to come back to Deloitte in a bit with they've put some value to that as well. The other thing that they found linked to absenteeism is what's called presenteeism. So this is where people come to work in an unwell state, not well enough really, they shouldn't really be at work. And presenteeism also is a cost to the business because people are less productive because they're not motivated, they're not happy, don't really want to be there, shouldn't really be there, but they're there for whatever reason. And that is another cost to the business. So absenteeism, presenteeism are positively affected by wellbeing programs. So what else have we got? So increase in employee retention. So what we can start to see here is a link then between, well, what happened? What's the impact of having an effective wellbeing program? If people are more motivated, people are happier, they're generally more physically active, they're healthier, therefore they're able to attend work more. Well, what does that mean about retention? Well, that has a knock-on effect then to retention. And the CIPD found that they found that there's a 43% 43% of organizations reported improvement in employee retention. And again, another significant saving for organizations. If you can retain staff, it's not just the cost in terms of pounds of recruiting and training people, but think about the knowledge retention. That knowledge retention piece in organizations is critical, because you don't want, if people leave, they take a lot of knowledge and experience with them, which is hard to replace, certainly in some industries. So that knowledge retention is huge value, but also just the saving and cost saving in recruitment. So what else we got? Brand reputation. So then we can see that the impact that what would a good wellbeing program have on terms of brand reputation. And Glassdoor have reported that in their surveys of people who use the site, 81% of job seekers consider company culture as important as salary when evaluating job offers. And we know that culture, in terms of having a good culture from a wellbeing perspective, is very appealing, particularly to younger job seekers, but also, well, not just younger ones, older ones as well, people later phases in life. We find the wellbeing programs are very welcoming and supportive of people going through different phases in life. Maybe that's having children, getting married, people maybe who are looking after elderly parents, having caring needs. So as we go through people go through phases in life, of course, they have different needs to take care of people, and having a supportive wellbeing program is as important to those people as salary. So this hopefully start to look at the scope and breadth of what elements a wellbeing program will actually connect with. There's more stats now. We start to get more now into the pounds, the return on this now. So the Employee Engagement Awards, which is an annual award, is actually a global organization that does this, have different regional awards, different country awards as well. They do a lot of really good studies where they look at what people are doing in the wellbeing field. Also, they look at the business results and they correlate the two. So they've got a lot of data that goes into their work, and they've found that actually companies with high employee engagement and morale outperform their competitors by 22% in terms of profitability. That's quite a heavy number. That's a big number. That's a very impressive number. So I say the data there is fairly reliable in terms of its scope and scale of that. So we can trust the data there. By the way, all the stats here, the data, the reports, they're on a PDF. So if you're interested in learning more specifically about these, then you can download the PDF and you get the links to the actual reports to read it for yourself. Yeah, increased profitability. So we can now say if we've got an effective program for wellbeing where we're going into the right areas, where we're building a cohesive plan here, we can potentially look forward to an increase in profitability about 22%. We can also then, if we're on a bigger scale, in terms of stock market, companies with effective wellbeing programs outperform the stock market by 2 to 3% per year. So again, if you're a big company, from a big company, a PLC, then that's potentially what you can look forward to in terms of financial return. But if you go back to Deloitte, Deloitte's number crunching, and this has been updated recently, it's for every £1 that you spend on a wellbeing program, you can look forward to a return of up to £5 return if your program is effective. That is primarily based on reduced absenteeism, reduced presenteeism, and staff turnover, with a factor, of course, towards increased productivity. Now, that Deloitte report was initially started in 2017. It was then been updated year on year, and it featured in a BBC TV program and report as well, where it updated again a couple of years ago. So it's fairly fresh data. However, what is also we know about is that you're not necessarily going to get that. There are varying reports, different numbers. Some, maybe it's £2 return to every £1 and upwards. Deloitte's saying £5, but you have to have the right kind of program. And I'm going to talk about that. What is that kind of program in the next few phases? So hopefully that's given you some really useful data, reliable data, so recent surveys, recent reports, that you can then start to think, okay, how effective is our program? If what do we need to do to get that scope and scale to look forward to those returns? So that's enough for me for now. I'm going to hand back to pause here for a moment for Scott. So I think he's got a couple of things he'd like to add here.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. I know I want to take what Stuart's just said there, because it's all incredibly valuable information, and I want to look at it in a slightly different way, from the perspective that we have first-hand experience within Prosure of seeing how this is developing. And I want to break down some numbers really to begin with. So within the UK, about 99.2% of all businesses are in the small business category. So we're looking at businesses here with 0 to 49 employees. And the majority of those, if you look at that cross section, are all within the service-based sector. And the results of poor well-being and well-being practices put in place by these smaller businesses has impacts to our businesses beyond the impact of well-being on our own employees. In fact, the effective well-being strategies of some of our supplier businesses can directly impact on our own employees' well-being. So if you were to take just a moment right now to think about the businesses that support you on a day-to-day basis, anything from contractors, electricians that keep your lights on and your employees being able to see in the office, plumbers that maintain your toilets if they're to go down, IT consultants, even the cleaning businesses that come in and ensure your office space or your retail space is clean and tidy. These are all businesses that we rely upon to keep the lights on in effect, and us being able to effectively sell goods and services to our customers. So this is where the crucial point from my perspective comes. And as I've already stated, the majority of these support businesses are SMEs. And when they face the well-being issues that Stuart's just been through there, such as absenteeism, unhappy employees, high turnover of staff, it doesn't just affect that business. It indirectly impacts on your business through reduced service levels, attendance, and factors such as that. So within Prosure, we've traditionally looked at focusing on helping our clients understand the procurement impacts of suppliers' health and safety, compliance, financial health, and wider overall business standing. But over the last few years, we've really seen a shift towards the importance of well-being within those service provider businesses being a prominent factor for our client base. And one thing just to take into consideration as well, a bit of knowledge through our background in dealing with health and safety aspects is in recent years there's been a much more prominent focus from the HSE on topics such as employee fatigue and employee mental health, meaning that this is becoming a wider topic for us all to consider, and it could change even further if the impacts of the HSE's findings and pushes see changes and tweaks in legislation built in to combat the ongoing negative effects of well-being within businesses. And I think that leads us quite nicely on, Stuart, to our first poll, if I'm right. Yes, it is. So what we're going to do in a second is we're just going to change the screen slightly to open up the poll. You'll see here that the first question we're interested to understand from all of you is, do you have a dedicated person within your organization or a team that are dedicated there to managing and driving employee well-being? Thank you for that. And what we'll do with the results of these polls is, off the back of the webinar finishing today, We'll put the information into some infographics that we'll post on our socials, both from Healthy Performance and Prosure360, so you can see the outcomes, and we will pad that out with some of our insights as well. But back over to you, Stu.
Thank you very much. So there are some themes around developing an effective wellbeing program that tend to be key pillars, if you like, for effectiveness of that. Having a dedicated person, dedicated team to run it, where they've got their independent budget, they've got access to the senior leadership team, they've got autonomy in making decisions, that tends to be the starting of enabling structure towards well-being. We tend to find that sometimes in organizations, somebody's doing the role of the well-being lead, and it's an additional part of their job. It's not necessarily even an official role, they're just a willing volunteer. And that may and often that's how it starts, to be honest, willing people take that role and then lead on. So it will be interesting to see how many of you actually have that kind of lead role, and how much support that they get. So we're going to look then at what are these components of well-being. So to get those results we talked about, that return on the investment, there are some components that we do need to consider and make sure they're part of the program. So first of all, there is the usual combination of mental health and physical health components. So you might have mental health first aiders, you may run workshops and webinars on mental health, sustaining and building good mental health. You might have the same kind of thing going on in physical health. So workshops, education, promotions. You may have cycle to work scheme. You may have a program around subsidizing a membership of a gym, or you may have a corporate gym on site, etc. So there are elements around mental and physical health that are usually the core structures of a wellbeing program. But what we know from the research, and this has been backed up by some very recent data from the University of Oxford's Wellbeing Research Centre, also Johns Hopkins over in the States, and even Gallup through their surveys at Gallup University, they've found that that's not enough. It's not enough to have a kind of menu of items that just tick the boxes around mental health and physical health elements. We need to go deeper than that, and we need to go broader than that as well, deeper within the organization and over a broader scope. So what does that really mean? Well, then we've got the kind of element of leadership and culture. Go back to what some of the Glassdoor, for instance, said. The culture within an organization is very appealing to people now, as appealing as salary. So people don't just want to earn the good money, they also want to be in the right environment. So leadership and culture has to embrace well-being. Well-being has to be a part of what goes on, as opposed to being just something we do, a tick box exercise. So there may well need to be some sort of leadership level promotion of well-being. It's an essential part that the senior leadership team need to endorse and lead the way with it, provide the structure, the resources, but also has to be an evaluation of culture. Because if the culture within the organization is not correct, so therefore people are struggling at work because of high workloads, maybe too much pressure, lack of resources, too much turnover, etc., then it doesn't really matter what components of mental health and physical health you got. If the problems are that intense, the first level, points 1 and 2 won't work. And that's been proven in a lot of research. In other words, you'll be kind of almost wasting your money investing in points 1 and 2 if point 3 and point 4 are not addressed. So then the nature of good work. So we're looking at the nature of the job. Is it satisfying, rewarding? Does it have opportunities for people to have autonomy, sense of mastery, and so on? So there's elements of what makes a good job, what's good work. Health and safety have given some great guidance around the 6 risk factors of this as well. So again, this part of the components. Points 5 and 6, then again, it extends a bit further now. So collective relationships. We know that relationships in work have a big impact on a sense of well-being. And so, again, the well-being programs and components of them should be about bringing people together, building the bridges between people. This can be particularly important if people are hybrid working or working from home or working in remote places. How do we maintain that collective relationship with everybody? Bringing, again, personal growth is important for some people, not necessarily everybody, but again, it's part of people's well-being, that sense of progression, that I'm moving on, I'm developing. Then points 7 and 8 are external things, really. It's about looking at how educating people around good lifestyle choices and things like financial well-being. They're kind of 8 key components. But what you'd also find is, depending on your organization, there may well be some special needs around special areas you might focus on. So menopause support is important, to educate people around the impact of menopause, things like bereavement. There could also be relationship counseling for people going through relationship problems. So there may well be components that you put into some elements of this that, of course, will fit with the needs of the people. And this is the key part of being an effective wellbeing program, is it needs to be targeted, it needs to be intentional, and the intention is to serve the needs of the people. So what do they need in terms of good work? What kind of specific support do they need in terms of their lifestyles and so on? And having those components is a key part of it. So taking an approach from company A and applying company A to your company, it might not work, and then that investment won't get the return. So it needs to be tailored and targeted. This is where we come towards a more strategic approach. So let's have a look at that. When we're looking at a strategic approach, there are 3 key questions to consider. So question 1 is, well, where are you now? So if you think about those pillars, those components that we talked about before, getting a sense of that is, where are you now in terms of where are you with mental and physical well-being? What's the culture like? How good is the work? You know, being able to, how good are the relationships, and what are the growth and L&D opportunities? Having been able to tap into that is important. Looking at the lifestyle choices and the financial elements, there are services that you can get and activities you can do that will tap into that and get you data. So for instance, healthy performance, one of our key support services is we go out to organizations and run health and well-being assessments, and it's on a dashboard effect, so they get immediate results on a digital dashboard, which provides individuals with very, very clear data on their physical well-being. That we can then provide the company with a dashboard overview, all anonymized, of course, with the key data. So we can provide a dashboard of how healthy the organization is. We can do the same thing with the mental health assessment. We can do the same thing with lifestyle choices, where people get individual analysis and expert guidance, but also the company gets a dashboard of information. That's incredibly useful, because then if you're doing follow-up activity, you know where your starting point is. So we know how we can measure that return on the investment, and we can see the improvements. And we have got organizations we've worked with over a number of years now that we can see that progression of their data improving over time. So question 1 is, where are you now? Second question then is, well, what is the vision? What is improved and embedded well-being look like for you in your workplace? Again, every organization is pretty unique in terms of its components and purpose and so on. So what does good well-being look like? So that's the second thing, is the end point. What are you looking to achieve? Third question is, well, how are you going to sustain it? So when you think about these 3 questions, it starts to then bringing you towards a more strategic approach to well-being, rather than just doing a menu of items that you're hoping are going to land well with people. So that begs the question then, really, is how many of you got a strategic plan? So this is the next poll, is we'd love to know how many of you got a dedicated well-being strategy. Current statistics in the UK are that only about 54% of companies have a strategic plan specifically for the well-being of the employees. So we'd love to know what your thoughts are, whether you have a strategic plan. Okay, thank you for answering that. We'll obviously get the poll results to you later. So let's now look at what does a strategy look like. Some of you may well already know this and be doing this, so it's hopefully a good reminder for you if you're doing that. Some of you might be thinking, well, I'm not sure if we've got a strategy or not. So let's look at what the components of a strategy might be. And this is where we lean into kind of organizational strategy tools. So where does it begin? So if we go back to those 3 points, where are we now? Where do we want to be? Actually, we start with the second point there, the vision. So we're looking at the wellbeing vision. So the aspirational goal that defines the desired future state of employee wellbeing within the organization. So what is it you're trying to achieve? What's the vision? What does that look like in terms of activities, culture, motivation, happiness, retention, all those pillars we talked about earlier, the stats that we got at the beginning. You can start to look at, well, where are we now? What's the vision for that? So we're looking to achieve that positive vision for the future. So that vision needs to be obviously constructed by the right people. So this is where that lead comes in. So if we go back to that question we asked earlier about, do you have a dedicated person to run your programs or team to run the programs? Think about those components we talked about. Do they have access to that? Do they have availability to go in and influence culture and influence the leadership team and report to the leadership team to get support? Do they have an awareness of what is good work? What do they have the budget and the control to organize events and so on? So access to this is important. Who creates the vision? Well, it needs to be that leading teams, but that vision needs to be agreed on and supported by the senior leaders of the organization, and it's got to be a compelling vision. So this is the point we're going to make next as well. Is the strategy piece has two approaches to it. There's the kind of what you believe as the leadership team or the wellbeing team is the right vision, but does that connect with the people? Do the people in the organization, do they see that as being worthwhile and useful to them? We'll come on to that in a minute. So it starts with the vision, create the vision, then we come on to the mission. So this is like, how are you going to do it? This is the approach. How are you going to achieve the ambitious vision? So your commitment to the approach to promote and support the well-being of its employees. So that's what you're going to do into the mission. So effectively, the vision is what we're trying to achieve. The mission is kind of the approach towards doing it. The next component is breaking that down to clear objectives. So this is where we get specific measurable targets set to achieve the mission, to realize the vision. And this is where we start to then look at the key aspects of those pillars, of those components. We say, okay, we might have objectives around mental health, physical health, retention of staff, absenteeism. So whatever you've identified as your core vision, where are you now? Where are you? Where do you want to be? And now we start to set some specific measurable objectives in moving from where you are to where you want to be based on the right components for yourselves. And then that leads down to the final thing, which is the actions. Then, so these are the actual concrete steps. So this is the kind of timetable activities that are going to do that. This is the change in the policies and the procedures, the movement towards more flexible working perhaps, or more support systems being brought into the organization, because that makes it holistic. As I said about that leadership culture piece, it's not just about having the activities, but it's looking at the policies. Do they offer the right support to people? Looking at the procedures, looking at the ways of working, what minimizes stress, builds extra resources, etc., that make it a good place to work. And this kind of cascades down. So you have that vision for it, you've got the kind of mission statement, you break it down to core themes, and then each theme has specific actions. That becomes then your plan for achievement. And of course, that should all be aligned. So that's then looking at the kind of the pyramid style of a traditional well-being strategy. But that's only one side of it. This could be done top down from the leadership team or the well-being team, and you can create a brilliant strategy based on your insights, your measurements, gathering all that data, where you are, where you want to be. It's a great exercise to do, and it's very motivating to do that. I mean, creating that vision is brilliant, but if it doesn't connect with the people, there's a disconnect clearly by default. So how do we overcome that? Well, it's to have another kind of plan for engagement now. So what part of this is then, how are we going to promote and engage the well-being programs so that actually it's used by people and it's effective? So this is where we have to then go out to the people. Now, this could be a dual process. As you've created the strategy, you're gathering data input from people. So that could be happening as an ongoing process. You can do a bit of both, gathering information first, bring it all together. But again, we can lean into models of promotional models. So we're going to look at the AIDA model here, and it's an acronym, but it forms like a funnel. So this is kind of funneling people, if you like, into taking action in terms of acting on and engaging with your your program of events and activities to promote well-being. So what's this acronym stand for? Well, the first A stands for attention. So one of the questions you have to ask yourself, how do we get people's attention? You know, how do we get them the messages out to people so it's a compelling and engaging in whatever format that might be? So again, look, this is going to be very different with different organizations. You know, some people work together in an office, some are remote, some are spread around. So how do we get that out? So it's looking at how do we get people's attention to make them aware of the program. Next one is the I, is interest. So what are they actually interested in though? What's useful to them? No point promoting things to people if they're not interested in it. If it won't work for them, they've got no interest in it, then you can do all the attention seeking you like, they won't be interested in it. So this is where you're going to have to maybe go out to people and start to gather information on what do they want to see in the program, what's useful to them, what they're interested in. This also, what gets people's interest as well, is testimonials. So again, promoting people who have used the services and benefited from it, promoting that is a very good way to get other people interested in that. So it could be then looking at more detail now, so we can get their attention by saying we've got this great new initiative coming on, we've got a great program of events coming for wellbeing, this is what we're going to be doing, and that kind of filters people down and okay, I'm interested now in this because that sounds interesting, that sounds interesting because that's useful for me. The D stands for desire. So they may be interesting to them and aligned to them, but what is their real desire to get involved? And this can be the cultural piece coming into focus now, because there might well be resistance to take part because of a culture problem. So engaging with wellbeing initiatives. Sometimes when I go out and do talks and seminars, I'll say mental health, for instance, I go to some organizations and we're doing maybe a workshop on mental health, and we'll have a full room of people. I'll go to the same session in a different organization, we'll get nobody there. And it's a culture thing, because there's something about the culture that second organization says don't engage with this program because there's something negative about it. So do people desire to get involved? What's their willingness and interest level to take action? That's the desire piece. How do you pique their desire? And the final one is the action. And so you need clear calls to action, ways for people to actually get involved. So you've got to think it all the way through. So you get their attention on things they're interested in. The desire's there. You pique their desire. Now it's okay, sign up here. This is how you get involved. This is the role you can play. This is how you access the support. This is how you access the help, etc. You're funneling people into it. So this can be done before you launch the strategy, ideally. Gather the data. So how do you get their attention? What things are they interested in? What desire is there to be involved or engaged in the program? And how are you going to get them to sign up and do it? Now in Healthy Performance, we try to make it very simple. We've got a very bespoke, we've built around booking system for this. So it's all online, very simple, takes seconds to book into our activities. Takes the onus away, takes the effort out of it, makes it clear and easy. So finding ways to get people to act on it, book themselves in and access the services is a key part of it feeds into your strategy. So there's two key elements for what a kind of a strategy around wellbeing might look like. So what we're keen to know now is, now that you've heard what we've said about strategy and the elements and the components of it, do you think you have an adequate wellbeing strategy? So it's a kind of reflective question now. You've answered the first question. Do you think you have a strategy? Or do you have a strategy rather? Now think again. Based on what we've just talked about, do you think your strategy is adequate? I hope you don't mind me talking while you're doing it. I'm hoping people are voting away. Obviously, what we're looking for here is for you to think, okay, where can we improve? What maybe your blind spots, maybe things you haven't considered, going back and looking at those again and thinking, okay, let's maybe make a more cohesive strategy, a more fully rounded strategy. There might be elements you haven't done, but I will remind about the key elements around what the recent research has found in the two sides of this. It's easy to put on a calendar of activities that will, look good on paper, and many companies will engage many people in organizations will engage with those activities if the culture's right. If the culture's right. Now, what do I mean by culture? Well, sometimes people haven't got the time for it because they're too busy, because they're overloaded with work. That's the kind of culture thing, which is the working culture. There are other cultures that say if you get involved in the well-being, there's something wrong. I go do coaching in organizations, and in some organizations, coaching around kind of well-being or performance is seen as a very positive thing. It's seen to be a benefit and something which is people aspire to be part of. I might go to another organization where if you're receiving coaching, there's something wrong with you, and of course that stigma holds people back. So that's the kind of culture piece around this. The desire to engage may be low because of some of those elements. So being able to assess the culture and look at the root cause of that, and address those root causes, that's seen as making it effective. Because if you don't address those root causes of things like stress in the workplace, things like disengagement, things like the poor working conditions, those core elements that make the job a good job or a poor job, if they're not addressed, the well-being activities don't work, and it's just really not going to give you a good return on investment. So if you're going to put those measures in place, it's also then necessary to get those good results we talked about at the beginning. It's necessary to address that second piece around the leadership, the culture, and the good working practices. They go hand in hand in an effective well-being program. So thanks for that. Let's look at a quick summary now. So this is what we've covered. So we looked at the business case for employee well-being. We gave you some really impressive stats. That £5 return on £1 spent. That's a great statistic. 22% increase in profitability, 3 to 4% above stock market value. But all those stats is about the motivation, the happiness, the engagement. They just say to you that well-being done effectively makes the organization a great place to work, and that's why people stay in their roles. You retain the good staff and talent, and that brand reputation, it kind of pulls people towards you. You get a good reputation for looking after people, being a great place to work, and you will attract good talent that tends to stay. So that's the kind of business case for effective well-being. But the way you do it's important, because you have to have the right components need to be in there. They need to be targeted and focused on the needs of the people and the issues they might be facing within the organization there. That needs to be then put into a strategic framework so that you've got it coordinated, and that needs to then get kind of top level support, proper funding with the right people driving it. Of course, I'm talking here, there's a scope involved here. So small organizations may not be able to do all of that because it's not necessary, or they haven't got the resources for it. But you begin where you can begin, and you create your own strategy based on your own situation and resources. Of course, bigger companies and sometimes international companies, they may have a global lead on well-being, and then as that global lead, they coordinate activities within the regions, and each region has its own leadership for that, so it cascades down. And we find that the best organizations that do that, they've got a real clear structure. There's a very coordinated approach to it, because they've got a strategic plan. Now we've got resources available to you. So if you want to check out the stats that we presented at the beginning, and some other ones as well around the positive impacts of good well-being, there's the download the PDF. It tells you the report or the research, kind of what its key findings were, and we've got a link on there to them, so you can source them and then read the full article to understand the key components there. And there's a range of other PDFs available to you for you to check out on there. So that's what we've gone through today. So really, it's open now for questions. And if you want Scott's details and my details, they're on the screen now. So if you want to know more about what we can do at Healthy Performance to support you with your application and of your strategy, devising of your strategy, and you can obviously get in touch with us, and same with get in touch with Scott, what they can do to help you at Prosure. So thanks so much, everybody. Really open now for questions. So I think, Scott, you might be monitoring the chat there. Do we have any questions?
There's a couple come through. You've touched upon certain aspects of them, Stuart. So I think a little bit of expansion would obviously be valuable. So you've not long ago spoken about small businesses there and the challenges that they can face. So we've had one in. So we are a small business. What systems and support is out there? Sorry, what systems and support are out there for us?
Okay, yeah. So when small companies will tend to have to develop your internal support systems, but look at external support as well. So you might have look for strategic partners. A company like Healthy Performance, for instance, obviously, we're here to talk about well-being today, so we could also touch on some of our support. We can provide things like educational workshops. We can provide you with data gathering systems. We can provide you with health checks. We can provide you with mental health coaching. So we can provide you with a niche set of services which take the pressure off you developing that internal expertise. You'll get a high quality service from an external provider as well, because we're professionals in what we do, and we can then help you build that strategic plan as well. So it's really looking at what kind of organization you've got and linking up with strategic partners. There are obviously other organizations available as well. So obviously, by all means, obviously shop around and see who you can connect with best. There are organizations like Mental Health First Aid, for instance, that you can get trained people in, so that you've got someone trained in mental health first aid to have good conversations and supportive conversations with people. There are organizations like Health and Safety Executive, ACAS, that also provide training support services. Most of the mental health charities provide resources around training and support. So you can have call systems, you can use their phone lines, their emotional support services as well. Organizations like CIPD can provide you advice on policies and procedures, how you transition towards a more inclusive set of policies, if you like. So there are definitely professional organizations outside of obviously the company that you can tap into, and that helps you because you're not relying on developing that internal resource now. And so as you grow, if you do grow as an organization, get bigger, then what tends to happen is that resource gets brought internally, so you develop more internal resource. So I hope that's answered your question. Thank you.
That's good. One other one here. There are so many aspects to consider when we're talking about employee well-being. How do you suggest we record the impacts of the strategy we put in place? And I suppose there's obvious aspects to that, such as absenteeism. As businesses, we record those, probably fairly easy for us to monitor. But there's a lot of other factors that you've mentioned there, Stu, that's probably worth touching on.
So I'd say before you do any activities, think, what is the purpose of it? What are we trying to achieve with this activity? And think of that. What's the intention for it? What are you hoping to achieve from it? So you might be thinking about just doing an educational piece around just improving people's knowledge about a certain aspect of health and well-being. So it might be, for instance, you may have shift workers in your organization. So one of the things you might want to do is help them improve the quality of their sleep. So you may well put on some sleep workshops. You may well do that internally because somebody may have expertise in that internally, or you may bring in an external provider to run some workshops on sleeping. So what we'd say to you do is, if you're looking to improve something like improve sleep, is to then think, well, what's the current status around sleep? Maybe survey the staff that run shifts and say, how would you rate the quality of your sleep right now? Then run the workshops, and then give it a couple of weeks or a few weeks and survey people again and say, well, first of all, maybe you may survey them at the end of the workshop. Did you find that workshop useful? So always measure the impact of your sessions. Did people enjoy it? Would they do it again? Would they recommend it to other people? What was the uptake, etc.? So measure the impact, the uptake, and the engagement, first of all, and the satisfaction of that, to make sure it's the kind of style and impact that your people like. Then measure the impact of it. How did that knowledge from that session get applied to have real results? So then you survey later to see, has it uplifted the quality of people's sleep? again, as Scott mentioned, it might be absenteeism. You might have there's increased absenteeism based on stress, for instance. So you may have a stress a theme around stress issues, and therefore people are taking time off for stress-related absence. So there's your measure it. How much time is lost through stress at the moment? Are you recording that accurately at the moment? So this is that transition of policy. So sometimes we record absence not detailed enough, so we don't break it down into what was the cause of the absence. So you might have to think we need to gather data first on this. You've heard that people are struggling with stress, but you can't quantify it. So first of all, start to quantify what is the level of stress issues amongst the team. Then you can run some programs, activities around stress management. Ben White said earlier, just putting the onus on people dealing with the stress better isn't always effective, because you have to look at the cause of the stress in the first place and have a two-pronged attack on that to be really effective. And then you measure it later. So you can look at the changes you make to relieve the pressure. You can also look at the activity you do to build people's ability to manage stress better. And now you can look at remeasure it. Once you've got the core data, look at the data afterwards, but always measure the satisfaction of the activities. So when anyone that engages in your activities, what do they think of it? Did they enjoy it? Would they recommend it to somebody else? Did they learn something? And are they going to use it? That kind of standard kind of feedback questions from any activity you do, because you need to know it's the right style to fit the preferences of the people who are attending. So hope that's answered the question there.
Thank you, Stuart. And that is it for the questions that have come in throughout. The chat's still active, so if anyone has any further questions, by all means pop them in. But I would like to thank you all for your attendance today. I'd like to thank Stuart for his presentation and his insight. That's been certainly, from my personal perspective, really valuable. Just a quick reminder that we've got the PDFs available still for you to download, and anyone that was registered or that has viewed today's webinar live will get a recording sent to them over the next couple of hours as well. And by all means, keep an eye out for our socials to hear a little bit more about the insights we've gathered from your poll answers today. So once again, thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you very much, everybody, from me. Best of luck. And if you need any support, please do get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.